Hello, hello, hello. That is how I start every video, just mindlessly attaching comments.
But
Yeah.
no. Hello.
Did it work? Did I do it? Yes, I did. Great. Okay.
Hi, Wade.
Cool.
Hi, Wade.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Between Two Nerds, your favorite show for connecting with notable nerds that you love while also learning some voter education knowledge. I'm JP Karliak.
I'm Courtney Taylor.
And today we have an extremely special guest. Court, you wanna do the honors?
Stephanie Sheh. What can you say about Stephanie Sheh? It's insane. She has a bazillion credits. She's the voice of Sailor Moon and the Viz Dubs. She's now I'm going to butcher some of these names, but Zhu Li in Legend of Korra. And who doesn't love Legend of Korra? Cher Bear in Care Bears. Welcome to Care-a-Lot, my favorite. Renee in Barbie Dreamhouse Adventures. And now I'm going to butcher the names. Also, Hinata in Naruto. Casey in Cannon Busters. And Orihime in Bleach.
That she is. She's also an amazing ADR director and dubbing director. She has worked in basically every aspect of the industry that there is. And
motion capture, she writes ADR. She does like the translation scripts for localization. She is a badass.
yeah, she is all things. She is amazing. But let's be honest, the only reason you're here is because she has a huge collection of Kigurumi. Please welcome the amazing Stephanie Sheh. Is it happening? Is it happening? Is it happening? It's connecting. Is it doing it? Oh,
I feel like maybe you should press the button before you say all that.
I know. Hi.
You guys timed that perfectly. Like
Did we?
the little loading for me to join, like it was exactly when you're like, and here she is, and it like timed out internet-wise perfectly. I was impressed.
Oh, okay, great. We weren't sure. Sometimes it feels like we mistimed it. So I'm glad. How are you?
Good. I just scarfed down some food, some pulled pork, and I ordered from a local Black-owned business.
Oh, which one?
I have to look it up. It's not a place that I would have normally gone to.
Barbecue place.
Went to it, but it was like it was like very like
barbecue.
Cuban-y, like it was actually Cuban-y food.
Oh, okay. The only reason I asked is because I've been looking to see if there are if there's any around me because I live in Glendale, and big surprise, Glendale doesn't have a huge dearth of black-owned restaurants and businesses. So I have to kind of like venture down to the Echo Park and Pasadena and
Pasadena doesn't have a lot either. I was checking in Highland Park, not so much. More Culver City, that area. But hopefully with putting eyes out there, then people can, expand their businesses into places that they weren't before.
Yeah, for sure. So that's actually a great segue. So the world has changed a little bit since our last Between Two Nerds. We were unable to not we were unable.
We opted not to
join
Tuesday,
with,
or in honor of Blackout Tuesday.
Yeah. But we decided to come back because, let's be honest, one of the most important things right now, not just in light of the pandemic, but in light of the other pandemic, which is racial injustice, and so many other things, one of the most important things we can do is get people to vote. So here we are. So Stephanie,
Yes.
first of all.
It sounds like you're in trouble, Stephanie.
Yeah.
I know it does, right?
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Okay, but segueing from voting and then also sounding like you're in trouble, my friend works for an app called Outvote.
Oh.
And when he started working there, he looked up my voting history. Because I guess you can look up people's voting history. And I got a text and he goes, you voted and all the da-da-da. He's like, good for you. Because I was voting not just for the presidential elections, but I wasn't always that person, but I started voting at every election. And I just got this text out of the blue and I was like, wait, what? I mean, it was complimentary and I felt good, but at the same time I was like, oh, you can totally out your friends.
It tells when you voted, but it doesn't say who you voted
how.
for. Right?
Exactly.
Just how.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. It says that you did
what your
participate.
party affiliation is, and if you didn't vote, it has a little line through it that says that you did not participate. Now, to be fair, it's not a perfect science, so, don't go hitting people up and yelling at them. Stephanie.
Yeah. We actually
and Courtenay.
Yeah.
I was like,
we were actually talking about, like, is there a way to use it? But there's something that's just a little like, how do you know this? Even though it's all public record, it just feels a little invasive. But yeah, so I think first of all, what have you been doing lately that for quarantine and also for the movement? Like, how have you been busying yourself? What's going on?
Well, as you mentioned before, I wear many hats. So in the beginning of this whole lockdown, situation, it was like crickets, like nothing was going on for like a really long time. All my friends were working and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden this week, it was like, oh my gosh, like I have 3 sessions today from my house, obviously. Well, not obviously, because some places I hear rumors of some people being able to go into a physical space. Anywho, but I will say, like, earlier this week and last week, it was really hard because I also do some casting and, I had to approve scripts. And then with the remote recording, it takes twice as long because there might be some technical hiccups. And then you have to try to also, it's better if you schedule audio tests and internet connection tests and all these things before the actual session. But that also takes up time. So like every all around, actors generally don't get paid for that, and then the engineer in the studio isn't getting paid extra to spend all this extra time to make sure things run smoothly either, So just overall, it's just costing people a lot more time, so that's frustrating. And then with everything going on with the protests
and
in
a
the
lot
world
more
and whatnot.
Because everyone's like, please work, please work, please work.
Yes,
you gotta
exactly.
Pay
like total stress. Yes. But the last few weeks have actually been pretty rough. I had a friend who passed, who is no longer with us, and that happened right before all the protesting going on. So I literally went to a digital memorial, went to bed, and woke up to like people, like, a lot of protesting, and I was like, whoa, because I was a little out of it because I was so wrapped up in the memorial. So, and then, trying to help support my friends and what they want to do. And I think it's interesting because this last week, I've seen a lot of call outs because I've seen a lot of people who are kind of posting about standing with Black Lives Matter and whatnot. And then you're now there are other people who are calling out either companies or individuals for saying, oh, you're posting this, but you did XYZ in the past. And people have like stayed silent before. And I think everyone's really frustrated, even down to the tiniest, we're not talking about lives. Maybe we're talking about representation. We're talking about something else. But they're like, no more. I'm not going to stay silent. I'm not going to just say like, oh, this is how it is, and I don't care if it jeopardizes potential work in the future because it's not right, and I'm seeing a lot of people speak out, which is refreshing, I guess.
No, it absolutely is. I mean, it's like, I think a lot of people saw John Boyega, Star Wars, at the protest in London, just being like, this may my career, but who cares?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Or how about Seth Rogen? Oh my God.
No, I don't know what Seth Rogen did.
I don't know. I don't think I've seen that.
Yeah.
Just not now, but after we're done.
Later.
Look up Seth Rogen. He's literally just, if people are like mad at him in his Twitter feed about anything to do with supporting the protests, he's just like, fuck off. Like,
bye.
Get fucked. Don't watch my movies anymore.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, Seth Rogen is on fire.
I will say that.
Go ahead. No,
I was just going to say, by and large, I'm pretty proud of our voiceover community. I mean, there have been a few people who I'm not going to name names, but at least not right now, but who have been very radio silent. But I'd say by and large, the vast majority of the people that I know in voiceover and are doing the thing. Like, really some of the, people who have been on the streets, people who are posting links and donations and resources and all sorts, and signal boosting and raising the voices of Black artists and Black activists. And yeah, I'm not saying we're all doing great, but like,
yeah,
I'm pleased with our community that we're trying.
But I also think too, I mean, I think that there's a lot of anger, and I think there's a lot of like justifiable anger. But I also do think that like everyone has their own bandwidth, and we have to remember it's not it's a marathon, right?
Yeah.
So if it's too much and you do need to step back a little bit, then step back a little bit. But to step back completely and not get involved, that's a privilege, whether it be economic privilege or a societal privilege or a racial privilege. It is a privilege, but so I think it can be kind of complicated, and I also think like I feel like my opinions, even I've always been pro diversity. I am a minority, but my mom is Buddhist. I'm Asian, and I think like my family culturally has always been kind of the don't make waves type of culture. And also like, let's lead with, like not blaming people for ignorance and stuff like that. So like, that's kind of like what I was brought up with. But, the more that I lived and the more that I interacted with other people, I understand a value in other ways. Like I have a very good friend of mine. She was my roommate for a while. She's a fabulous actress. And she's Black. And we had this conversation because she one day just had a really crappy day, and she was on the freeway and like it was to the point that like when she'd see someone cut her off, she was like, there's another white person trying to take, get like, like she was like extrapolating to a kind of larger something that I felt at the time was like making it bigger, not about race, like it's just someone cutting you off, but like the contextual of like what she saw, I didn't really like, I didn't really see that way, and I didn't understand why she was so pissed off. And then I had a conversation with my brother, and my brother is like, Stephanie, just because you're a minority doesn't mean that your minority experience is the same. Like just because I'm Asian doesn't mean that I claim to know how a minority should feel, how a Black person should feel, because it's not the same experience. And the Black people in America have it so much worse. So I can't say, I've never lived in her shoes. I can't say that I wouldn't have that anger. I can't say that like anger isn't like, she shouldn't be angry. She should be more, be more forgiving. And I had another conversation with her, which like somebody came at her with ignorance. And people have come at me with ignorance about Asian culture before. And I had just said to her in that conversation, I was like, well, I if someone's ignorant, I'm a little bit more forgiving versus if someone is aggressively hateful, and
sure.
And I said, like, I choose to try to just, educate them, because I feel like if I am antagonistic toward them, I won't bring them over to my side. And on some level, I still believe that, because any person who is a member of a minority group, whether it's a racial minority or any type of minority, they don't have the luxury. They always have to represent their group, even if they don't want to. Like, we don't get a choice. We have to be a role model, you know? Whereas other people can be a choice and be like, I'm not your effing role model, you know? But then she said this thing that has like stuck with me in my mind forever. She goes, oh, okay, so they get to oppress me and I have to educate them, right? And then she's like, you know about other cultures other than the Asian cultures. You know about other, you know, other histories other than just your Chinese history. You educated yourself. Why is it my job to also educate them? And I think that that really, like when she worded it that way, it really stuck with me. It should not.
Well, and it's the institutionalized history is everyone's forced to learn a particular history and forced to learn about a particular culture. It's not, you know, like here's the poo-poo platter and then you choose. It's, hey, this is the official version of something. And then if you belong to some other culture, you can have that. But like, it's like English is the only language. And if you want to learn something else, you can too, but you have to know English. And you have to know essentially like the white history version of this country and, you know, white culture for whatever that is worth, you know, my majority culture. And so it's kind of, you don't even have a choice in that.
Yeah. And I think I noticed this too, that I've noticed that my ethnic friends are more open to ethnic foods even that are outside of their ethnicity. People who are what I call hyphenated Americans or children of immigrants or immigrants. And what dawned on me later in my life is like, I noticed that pattern. I didn't really understand why. And then I realized, oh, it's because when their parents came here, they were forced to eat something that was not what they were used to. So they already have a mentality where they're open to trying new things, whereas somebody who does not have immigrant history, they don't have that, so they don't have to, so they can choose not to, you know. So
I'm laughing a little bit just because I'm thinking of a lot of, you know, my relatives who are, or my partner's relatives who are waspy, who they don't ever have to get spicier than black pepper. They don't ever have to get they can stay as bland as mashed potatoes for the rest of their lives because they have the luxury of just like, you know, like they can stay in their comfort zone as much as they want. They can stay in their bubble and not have to explore outside that or accept things outside that as much as they want because they have the privilege of being, you know, in that place.
To be fair, I will say that I think that something that also mitigates that is travel. It's not, I would also say that of my friends who have made it out of the United States or made an effort to do something where they have been more, you know, had their eyes open to other cultures are also, you know, I think that's a fundamental thing that we should promote, which
exposure.
is unfortunate that it's not, you know, a possibility right now, but that idea that you go places and you be a minority other places. And that is a huge eye-opening thing, like to go, you know, not necessarily, there's no shade against Disney World or something, but like, you know, to actually go and feel what it's like to not understand a language or be surrounded by people who don't look like you or have to eat certain foods that are, you know, that you're just like, this isn't in my palate at all.
Right.
And I think the
so
hard work,
crucial, and so many Americans don't even own a passport.
Yeah, and I think the hard work that we need to do, because, you know, frankly, not all of us have the luxury to be able to travel, but like,
true.
But especially in these times when we can't, you know, it's kind of like you got to create that cultural education experience in your own home and read and, you know, buy a book and or you know, download it on your Kindle or whatever and learn those experiences and that history for yourself. You know, it's like you said, Steph, that, you know, it is up to us to do the educational work. You know,
we have to be curious,
yeah.
And also we have to, you know, if you have the option to study abroad, if you have a senior trip or something that goes somewhere, if you have an opportunity to take a, go to Mexico for a vacation or something like that. I'm not saying everyone has these options, but they do come up, and seize them when you can. It's really important. It's a huge component of empathy and understanding for everyone.
It's actually also why I'm such a proponent of diversity when it comes to our media and entertainment.
Yep.
Lots of times you think, well, I don't know if you guys have this thought, but you're like, what can I do? I'm just like an actor. I'm making things that people just consume for entertainment. Like it seems like maybe like we're not changing the world, but I do believe that like when we're talking about education, sometimes, myself included, I don't necessarily like want to do work. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to do something that seems like work in terms of learning, but I think that exposure is like the first step. So I do think that in our media and whatever we make, having diverse voices, diverse stories, and diverse faces, like actors and stuff, I think that that's kind of like the first step for getting people to take that next step of learning and being interested and coming out of their little hole.
Yeah. I mean, especially because, we've been cultured for hundreds of years that the default is white. And that, the base level is whatever the Caucasian European experience is. And then everything outside of that is like, oh, that's interesting. And it's like, why can't.
That's exotic.
Yeah, exactly.
So I heard something on NPR recently, and this woman was on, and she was like I don't know if she's like genetic, biological scientist, whatever. And she was talking about how our concept of race is all built on, long time ago, there were some pretty racist scientists that wanted to prove that, Black people were an inferior biologically. So they came up with this idea of race, right?
Oh, yeah. The fascinating thing is not that Caucasians stumbled upon Black people and were like, oh, they're weak people, let us enslave them. Oh, no. It was, we need labor, let's enslave these people, and we'll come up with the justification about how they're less than us later.
And how if you get your DNA test and whoever, it tells you you're half this or quarter this or blah, blah, blah.
Right.
There are actually no genetic markers for race.
No.
Like it doesn't, like there's nothing in our genes that say we are of one race or another race, just the human race, right?
Right.
The way they divide all that up is they pool all the traits, the physical traits or the biological traits of people from a certain area. And they say, okay, it seems like the people from this area have this trait. So if you have a lot of these traits, we're going to guess that you're from this area,
Yep.
They do the same thing to dogs. I mean, like there's no genetic marker for dog breeds. They're guessing based on the traits, they're like,
I feel like Beagle is actually the human zero or dog zero, because everybody I know that's done those tests, their dog always comes back like majority Beagle.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, we go and we want to like label, what people are, or like hopefully, I don't know if in our lifetime, but at some point that's not gonna.
Yeah,
that
because
will no longer be a thing.
For many
it's gonna get harder and harder.
Yeah, for many centuries, like the distinguishing factor is like, let's say you were just chatting with your pal Socrates, and you were like, oh, I just met somebody in the market the other day. Oh, tell me about them. Oh, they're from Ethiopia. You wouldn't start with saying they're Black, because we invented that much later. Like right. The designation for so long was just like where you're from, like, not what you look like or anything, and then as we decided that we needed a way to be able to other people and label them, then that was created.
Yeah.
Gross. And to get back to what you were saying earlier about I just lost it. Oh, right. the difference, that your minority experience is not the same as a Black minority experience. You know, I think, you know, the big response that a lot of white people come up with to this is, you know, the all lives matter, and that my life has been hard, you know, too. And you like, look, I don't want to negate the fact that everybody's life is hard in some way. And but I think the thing that people need to be educated about is that, yes, everybody has pain, everybody has hardship in their own way. But the thing is that you're not recognizing that people of color specifically have things that will happen to them or could happen to them, or experiences that they face every day that we as white people or non-Black people of color will never face. It is not the things that we have to think about.
I think that, you know, when we talk about like something like privilege, a lot of people of color and especially the Black community, they are disenfranchised. Like they have that's the opposite of privilege, right? Their lack of privilege shows not just with the racism, but also like the economic aspect too. So sometimes when you say something like just the generic term privilege, which can encompass all sorts of different types of privilege,
sure,
you'll have maybe a white person or someone from a white background who did not have economic privilege,
right,
you know, then kind of say that they're not privileged because they didn't have economic privilege. But you can be privileged in a lot of different ways. You know, I grew up middle class, so I was economically privileged, but like, and even when it comes to racial issues, there are things in terms of being Asian that I definitely have experienced racism, and other times I haven't as bad because I'm Asian. So I don't know. I think privilege is a really important word, but I think that also like we have to, you know, it's like that Avenue Q song where they're saying like everybody's a little bit racist.
I sing
it
every day because it's so true.
I feel like I will admit I am racist.
Yeah.
And my racism has changed over the years as I've become more and more educated. You know, like I gave the story before where I was like really upset at my roommate for being so angry, you know, and then until I recognized that was my privilege to be able to have the point of view of like not being angry. So I do think that when we converse about that, like, I think that maybe if you are white and you do have privilege, I think maybe stop thinking of it as, we're not saying that you are like the scum of the earth. We're just, you know, like that's the first step because when I talk to people about privilege, if I'm talking to, you know, a white friend, generally, not always, but generally, when the conversation doesn't go well, I don't even get to finish my thought because I get interrupted by defensive comments. And the interesting thing is when we're having a discussion, I'm like, I'm not saying any of these things about you, but then the defense comes in. So I don't know if it's just like having a different idea about privilege or just being in it, okay with it, you know? Because I could go around and say like, I'm Asian, I'm not a racist, you know? I don't know, like a racist, but like I'm not racist, but I only changed my view and grew because I acknowledged that like, hey, it's possible for me to have a point of view that maybe is not as compassionate, you know? Like it came from trying to understand other people instead of being worried about what other people think of me.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, because that's the work, isn't it? Like, I mean, look, I grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, to a blue-collar family. You know, my family had some opinions, and, you know, and some of them were kind of racist. Some of them were pretty racist. Like, you know, I was surrounded with that in high school. There was a complete lack of diversity in my area, so that I knew maybe one Black person until I was in high school, and not well. Like, you know, it was just so. Yeah, did I grow up ingrained with a lot of different racist perspectives? Absolutely. And are they swimming around in the back of my animal brain? Yeah. But the work is like when I see something or somebody does something or whatever that voice speaks up, it's up to me as an educated person to be like, no, that's not, that it's not okay. Do not voice that, reframe that narrative. You know,
well, it's also too about not necessarily, I mean, I grew up lower class in San Francisco, and it's not about just, I think privilege is, it can be different things in different situations. And so what happens when people say things like, all lives matter, yes, in the big scheme of things, every life is precious, but that's not what we're talking about right here, right? So the conversation is about that there is something that is either operating from a deficit or is on fire or whatever that needs your attention right now. And that's sort of the distinction. And anything other than that presumes that everything is all equal, and it's not. And I think for so many white people, it's been, because I grew up with lots of, you know, in San Francisco, it's a huge multiracial city. I didn't have the same experience that JP did. So I was more under the impression, I think what you're talking about, Stephanie, is like somebody like me who's like, hey, I'm not racist. I didn't grow up saying terrible things. My mom taught me that, you know, you don't cross picket lines, like everyone's equal. So when somebody says that, it's like, I think that reaction of being defensive is like, well, me personally, you know, me not being that way is just enough. But the thing is that something's on fire or operating from a deficit. So we have to fill that deficit with our own knowledge. So it's not enough to just not be racist. You have to be anti-racist. You have to, you know, if you want to fill that deficit, you have to start learning and saying, hey, I actually have to expand my consciousness. I have to have tricky conversations with my friends of color, and it's awkward. But I have to be the one that brings that forward, and I have to do this work in order to make things equal and everyone to be knowledgeable. And I think that's really hard for even the most liberal, you know, non-racist white person, is that we just haven't had to do work like this as a majority to say, all right, well, we have to put down whatever it is that we think that we have that just makes us equal with everybody else, and say, wait, there's more here.
Because you have to inconvenience your life, you know, how you have been living, to kind of take that banner up. And then if you delve deeper into it, you know, the racial privilege that the white society has came at the expense of other minority groups, you know. And so that, and I think that's a concept that's where the guilt kind of comes in, because it's not something that they did intentionally, like being a member of society. It's not like they intentionally tried to, but they reap the benefit of the oppression. And especially if everyone, like JP, you said, everyone's life is hard, you know, you're like, I have my own like my life struggles, and you're telling me that like I benefit, you know, like it's like it's complicated, you know, it gets tricky.
Yeah.
And economic tiers are very tricky, because it's not just a clear sort of equation. It is about what color you are, what gender you are, and you know, and where you fall on the gender scope, and how much money you have. And all of that turns into a very difficult mathematical equation of how you get treated in the world. But the most important thing, I think, is for everybody to look at whatever privileges. The bigger conversation is, look at the privilege that you have and start looking at people that don't have that privilege, and how to, you know, fill in that deficit in ways as small as, you know, going to Black-owned businesses, supporting people of color, going to, you know, when COVID-19 started and people were not eating at Asian restaurants, that kind of stuff. And people were purposefully saying, I'm going to seek these restaurants out and make sure that they have my business. Those are meaningful small steps. And also to look, just as an aside for myself, I mean, I'm first generation, my parents are immigrants, but from Australia and England. And I remember saying, we weren't even here. Like, we didn't participate in American history is not my history. And my mom was like, let me tell you a little bit about India and about South America and about the colonization
and
of
the
many
Empire
other
of
places
Britain.
by the British. And so it's like no matter where you're from, your skin color factors in. No matter where you're from or how much money you have, all of these things create this mathematical equation. And I think it's about real awareness in seeing who's lacking because they don't have those things, and extending a hand and empathy and curiosity to those people.
Can you guys hold on one second? My dog has been in my lap the entire time, and he's just been shifting around, and it's really uncomfortable. I'm just gonna
Let
make
us see
him.
his face.
He's not gonna. He hates the camera. Ipudo. Oh, now he's gonna jump down. Oh, don't look. See?
Yes. There's a face. There's a face.
Don't get caught. Oh, what is he doing? Okay, he wants to go that way. Okay. All right, he's down. Okay, sorry.
All good, all good. You know, that's also a nice transition. So for everybody that's out there that's a fan of Stephanie, if you have any questions for her, feel free to throw them in the little question mark thing down the bottom. We'll answer some questions. Yeah, but as a voting rights organization, I mean, something that we've been talking about from the beginning is, A, you have to vote in every election, local, statewide, national, and also that there is nothing wrong with, in fact, we encourage you to write to your representatives, whether you voted for them or you didn't, whether they're your party or they're not, and hold them accountable for things. And, you know, that's especially true right now, is speaking to the power and being like, hey, what are you guys doing about this?
You know, because of the COVID-19 and the lockdown and whatnot, sorry, I'm just distracted because right now my face is like exactly where somebody had commented a bunch of like fists, and it was like the fists were going right up in my nostril.
Yeah, I saw it too. Yep, you're doing it right now.
Anyway, so with the COVID-19 lockdown, there were some studios that were kind of basically trying to get actors in secretly and whatnot, or not, you know, like we're just not shut down. Like you could see that there were just too many cars in their parking lot, and you'd hear like things like that. So some of my peers have been writing letters to city council members or the mayor's office and whatnot, and you know, when I vote, I don't always have. It's hard to research everything, especially with something like your city council member. But now in Burbank, I have opinions about all my city council members because I have been writing them regarding businesses that have stayed open, or regarding like what I think is just not very clear in terms of the curfew or what, you know, and just some of the responses that I've gotten have been cut and paste or just not even answering the question. So yeah, anyways, but the more engaged you are in writing or reaching out, the more you kind of have a better sense of that process and the voting process. You know, the more you are involved in the community, the more you have an opinion, I guess.
Absolutely.
And the wonderful thing about social media is that you can actually follow a lot of these people. Again, I mean, I always talk about voice actors and you know, on-camera actors, that you have this amazing line of communication with people that you didn't have before. And it completely works for your elected officials. Regardless of how you feel like your officials are doing, you have the right. Nothing is set it and forget it. You have the right to let them know you think they're doing a great job and why. You have the right to let them know that you don't think they're doing a good job. I don't know if anyone tuned in to the 9-hour dragging that the LA Police Commission got a couple of days ago.
Oh, it was
I
fun.
just heard some
with
highlights.
COVID-19, they're holding, and I think they often stream, many city councils will stream their meetings as well for people who can't attend. And you can get in line and actually not even leave your house and participate in what's going on in your city. You can look up these people. You can, I mean, I DM'd people in the last week, including the Minnesota Attorney General's office. You can message them on Twitter. These are amazing ways that you can not only just kind of follow along, you can set alerts for when they have meetings. And it was really interesting. The LA City Council canceled its meeting the day after the police commission had that 9-hour dragging without any reason at the time. They just said, this meeting's canceled.
It was inclement weather, that's why.
To get dragged for 9 hours. But, and people were like, hey, we pay our taxes, pay your take-home pay. You have to reschedule this meeting. You can't just cancel it. You know, so these are the things that are right on your front doorstep. These, if anything that we've learned in the last week is that attorneys general, district attorneys, police chiefs, they all decide how things are going to go down. So you have so much potential to make change if you are paying attention when these people are getting elected.
And I would normally be like, not this past election, but the time before that, I actually volunteered as a poll worker. And that was like the most eye-opening but most fulfilling experience ever. Although I don't know if everything's going to be mail-in ballot. So I don't know if there will be actual polling stations.
I think there still will be actual polling places. It's just going to be...
They'll be socially distanced.
Yeah, and the mail-in ballots are super important, which reminds me, everybody click on our pinned comment so you can get your mail-in ballot. Every state is different. Please make sure. But I think, you know, especially in metropolitan areas, mail-in ballots will take the weight off of the polling places to allow for people that depend on a polling place to be able to be the place that they vote. So that, you know, if 2/3 of the people are doing the mail-in ballot, then that 1/3 of people that have to go to the polling place will be able to be socially distant and not put themselves in danger.
Honestly,
yeah, if you can vote by mail, you should.
If you can volunteer as a poll worker, seriously, it is like, I just like, it was something that I decided I wanted to do. So I put it in my calendar, what voting day was, and I made sure that I blocked out that day. So I wasn't working that day. I knew other people who just like took the day off work, and it was really eye-opening, and they need more poll workers. When I asked, I was like, well, there's supposed to be, I mean, each state is different, but there's supposed to be certain positions and roles and stuff. And when I was doing it, we didn't have our own supervisor. Our supervisor actually had to run from one place to another place because there wasn't enough. So, and then I had asked one of the people who were working with me, like, well, what happens if they get too many volunteers? And she actually has volunteered as a poll worker ever since she was 18, and she does it with her dad, and they've never missed any election ever. And she was like, she laughed, haha, too many poll workers. But you know, if there's more volunteer poll workers, then they can open more polling places. That's how that works.
Which is great, because then we can be even spread more.
Right. And you know how it is when especially certain areas, there's just like people are waiting for hours and hours and hours, you know? So if that's something that you could do, I totally encourage it. And it's so like, I mean, it was like, they don't, at least from my experience, like, they didn't even give you water. Like, you're there all day. You're not fed.
There's no budget for that.
There's no budget for any of that. So,
well, here in LA, there might be now that they cut the police department's budget by $150 million yesterday.
So, like, the other thing that might be nice is if you're not volunteering. And ever since I volunteered and knew this, right? Because the day that we had that, there were a few individuals who dropped off food. Someone dropped off a few pizzas. Somebody dropped off a bunch of like pastries and stuff. And then the one girl who volunteers every election, she was like, oh yeah, that guy always brings pizza, you know? Mm-hmm. And then and it was just like, I was like, I'm going to start bringing food when I drop off, you know, if I'm going in person. And actually the last time I was absent because I registered absentee always because I just don't know what's going to happen. You know, like I don't want last minute to be like, oh, out of town and then not. So I always register. I'm absent. But anyways, so I had already mailed in my ballot, but I dropped off. I went to a polling station and I dropped off a bunch of little like Starbucks coffees, like the kind you get in a grocery store, and some like treats and snacks, and they were super grateful, especially the teenagers were very, very grateful because I got the feeling that that place was the same as like my place, which was like we had nothing.
Awesome. Super cool.
So we have some,
yes,
we could talk about this all day.
Yes.
We do have a couple of questions from the folks in the chat that would be fun to get to.
Do you want? Okay, Court, you got one?
I do.
Mm-hmm.
It is. No, I just lost it. What was your reaction when Hinata finally confessed her feelings to Naruto?
Oh, I was like, it's about time. I wasn't, but I wasn't like really nervous because like normally when you normally in a romantic situation on a TV show, there's like another person, you know, there's like a triangle or there's like other contenders, but like there was like Hinata had no competition.
What are you waiting for?
Like I know Naruto's the lead, but like none of the other girls are like into him, so like I was just like about time, Hinata.
Awesome. We had another one.
Another one. Can you talk a little bit about one of your favorite projects to cast, watch, or participate in?
Well, you know, in terms of casting, I have quite a few that I'm very proud of, and they all kind of like that. They all kind of revolve around representation. I cast a film called A Silent Voice. The lead character is deaf, and the Japanese did not hire a deaf actress, but we were able to hire a deaf actress, and that was so rewarding. But also, it's like when we're talking about like exposure and understanding, and I realized I have this other privilege of being not, well, actually, I shouldn't say disabled because a lot of people in the deaf community do not consider being deaf disabled.
Differently
abled. Because they can still go and walk through life completely fine as an able-bodied human being. Right. So they just experience it differently. But I have hearing privilege, I guess. But anyways, in casting and working with that actress, and also because I received a lot of help from the deaf community because I knew nothing. And I don't know if this is helpful to anybody who is like not a minority, but like I was very open and honest. I like led with my ignorance. I led, like anytime I reach out to someone, I led with my ignorance, but I also led with my passion and my willingness to learn. Right. So members of the deaf community were very, very, they were very helpful, and they were very kind in teaching me a lot of stuff and helping me with that. And I learned so much about the culture, the deaf culture. And so that was a really, really good experience. One of the other experiences that I had was there's a film called Funan, and it's an animated feature. It's about the Khmer Rouge, the killing fields that, so I tried to cast as many Cambodians as possible, and I did have a decent number of Cambodians, and that was another experience. I voice directed that film as well, and that in terms of talking to our actors, and you know, most of the actors that came in, it's their parents' generation that went through that experience. Wow. And hearing those stories, I mean, I felt like I was a better human being. It enriched my life. I was educated. Sometimes I was so depressed. I felt bad. Like sometimes, you know, they would share the story and I would just like start sobbing. But that's another, I think that's another reason for representative and diverse casting, because it's not just about like giving people opportunities. It's really about like enriching the project, or even enriching your own personal experience from learning and interacting with groups and different people that is outside of your circle. So
yeah. Thank you to Deontay Black for that question. She also asked if you could talk about your experiences as a minority in voiceover theater and television, which I think that we've touched on a little bit. But is there any experience that, especially in voiceover, because
you know what,
we're all those people.
This is the thing that I find super, super interesting.
Yeah.
In voiceover, they can't see our faces, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you would think that in voiceover, in terms of in Hollywood, they could get away with whitewashing all the roles, like like that they could totally do that. But I actually find that for the most part, the VO community really wants to have a diverse cast and really cares about representation. And because they don't, like, I'm not saying that they don't have to. Yes, they have to. We all have to. You know what I mean? But like, they could hide it more easily, is what I'm saying.
Oh, sure.
But and the thing is, this has been my experience from like over 10 years ago. It's only gotten better and better and better with more and more people seeking that out. But I just am shocked, because I actually think that with some of the on camera stuff, they're more, it feels a little bit more token, like when they do have an ethnic role for on camera stuff versus for voiceover. So I'm happy to be a part of that community and have the experience. I'm not saying it's perfect. I mean, the stuff that happens the most when it comes to VO and being a minority, at least the Asian minority, is that people don't understand accents. And so, Asian is not an accent. It's like if someone says, oh, just do a European accent. You'd be like, I mean, French and German are totally different.
And yet somehow I always bleed them together.
And like British, like they're all different. But yet it's okay to say just an Asian accent, right?
Right.
And even if you get to like Chinese accent, like we have so many different dialects. And like, like if you were to do like a Cantonese accent, it's usually what people think of is what is mostly on like TV and media, versus a Mandarin accent, even though Mandarin's spoken more widely. Like Mandarin accent has more like So if I would say like computer, like in a Mandarin accent, it'd be like computer. Like that's how they would say it. It's like more covered like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then like a Cantonese speaker would be like computer. Like it's totally different. Like,
right.
But like I don't think the producers actually know. But like so like I'll ask, like, do you want a Mandarin accent or a Cantonese accent? And at least like I at least try to find out. But what I get a lot is like, oh, it doesn't matter. Like whatever.
It's funny you mentioned that. So there's an accent coach that I study with. His name is Tyler Seipel. He's amazing. Hi, Tyler. He's not watching. And the one thing he said in one of our accent classes is like, I'm teaching you how to do accents so that you can change the world. Which at first is like, what, buddy, what delusions of grandeur. But when he explained it, he was like, if you take the time to accurately portray an accent, then you are not taking a culture for granted as just like, oh, Chinese, whatever. You are actually taking the time to learn where it comes from, why they pronounce things that way, and to respect the culture, to bother with authenticity. And when you take that time, you are automatically bringing yourself closer into understanding that culture on a variety of levels. And I'm like, well,
that's
shit.
A beautiful approach to it.
I'm not going to BS my way through accents anymore. So yeah,
that's a really beautiful way to approach it. I will say that like I never did a Chinese or Asian accent before, and then I was like, well, people ask me to do it because I'm Chinese, and then I had to like learn it. And there was a time when and even when I slip in and I'm having a hard time learning it. And I've also studied Japanese. And one of the things that I would do is I would just break down the script into the phonetics of that language. you know. So like, you know, Mandarin, it's like our alphabet's like if I just changed all the American words into Chinese words, you know, like for example, this is like,
yeah. I see.
yeah, like so they're the old movie actor Robert Taylor, right? Robert Taylor. Well, like in Mandarin, his name is Luo Bo Tai La, right? Like so it's like it's like how would you say? Which is really funny because Luo Bo is like radish or carrot, and then Tai La is like too spicy. Like so like
so Robert Taylor is a too spicy radish.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But it's like that, to help me get into the accent. And so
and then you can either soften it or increase it, you know, kind of turn the dial.
Yeah.
That's cool. I like that.
So are you saying that my last name is too spicy?
Girl,
yeah,
you know you are.
It's like too spicy. Yeah, Courtenay, too spicy.
Yeah. Well, my mom's on the line, and she also has my last name, so I come out.
Maureen is also too spicy, despite being a British lady. Awesome. Steph, I would keep going for another.
We have to have you back on, Stephanie, because
but I actually have to go and phone
a new record for the longest little live cast here.
Oh, this was fun.
So,
I could talk forever.
The way that we sign off is we always ask if our guest will sign off as a favorite character. So I think, actually, let's ask the audience. Throw in the chat who your favorite Stephanie Sheh character is. I think I have a guess on who it's going to be, but
hopefully I remember how to do the voice.
Budget. They love you. They'll be all right.
I think they're asleep.
Okay.
Nope. We've got Rin.
Yui. Any more?
I think that's Suzuki Hinata.
Oh, people already want you back.
Okay, we got Hinata. We got another we got 2 Yuis so far. We got 3 Yuis.
3. Sailor Moon.
Wait, what do you guys say to sign off?
I mean, there's not a set script. It's basically just like you register to vote and vote this November and thanks and goodbye. Something akin to that.
The thing, I don't know which
Yui. Warmer and, you know.
Okay. Ready?
Yeah.
I'll do K-On! Yui versus Sword Art Yui. Because they're a little different. Okay, K-On! Yui's like, Gita! Hi, everybody. Remember to register to vote. Bye.
Awesome. Stephanie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, guys.
And everybody still watching, make sure that you not only register to vote, but you register to get your ballot at home so that no matter what happens this November, you can vote.
Yes, apply. Some of you have to apply to get your ballot sent to you. So there's a 2-step process in there. So make sure you can hit us up at NerdsVote.com. Lots of information on our website. There's obviously the bit.ly at the bottom. And if you have any questions, you can also just reach us on all our social, which is at NerdsVote.
Cool. All right. Thank you, Stephanie.
Bye.
Thanks, Steph. We'll have you back soon.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks, you guys, so much for watching, tuning in. We'll be back on Tuesday with a fantastic guest.
So check in on Saturday. Saturday is when we announce.
Saturday on our
we
socials
will announce our guest
at
on Tuesday.
Twitter and Instagram here, obviously. And just thank you guys so much for being so interested and contributing in the chat, and you know, stay curious and involved.
Yep. And breathe as you need to, because it's a marathon, not a sprint, as Stephanie said. All right.
That's right.
We'll see you soon.
That's right.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.